Natural immunity versus vaccination. That is the absolute most important topic, I think, that everyone in our movement really needs to understand the difference between natural immunity and vaccination. And I'm going to tell you why I think this is so important. When a parent thinks that a vaccine might harm their child, they're still going to vaccinate necessarily if they think that the disease is more deadly or more dangerous than the vaccination, even with the risk of injury. And so it's important to actually understand what the difference is between the two of these. What's the difference between natural immunity and vaccination? So let's go back to my website here, my web page. And I'm just going to give you this really super quick overview. This is pretty important because, look, I want you to understand this. There's a lot to this topic. I know I have a whole bunch of books, probably 30 books, and I've read a gazillion websites, and I've looked into this topic, and my brain kind of operates in such a way that I kind of prioritize. Whether or not it's the correct priority, I don't know, but it does prioritize. And my opinion is this is our top priority, is understanding the difference between the two. Because once, in my opinion, once you understand this difference between vaccination and natural immunity, everything else can fall under that. Everything else actually makes sense. So let me go back. Let me just read this to you. I'm not going to read you my entire website, just this part. I really think it's important. And one second. All right, so very quickly here. When a child acquires an infection naturally, the body mounts a full Th1 cell-mediated immune response as well as a Th2 humoral immune response. This fully activated immune response will create lifelong or near lifelong immunity. If exposed again, the child will not go through the intense infection process. By contrast, the vaccination process uses toxic adjuvants, this is the important word here, adjuvants, to aggressively overstimulate the Th2 humoral immune response, bypassing the critical Th1 cell-mediated immune response. This causes antibodies to be created against the injected antigens, but does not actually confer immunity, hence the need for booster shots. Vaccine effectiveness is thus measured in terms of antibody production rather than true immunity. A child can still acquire or manifest the very disease she or he is vaccinated against, and this does in fact often happen during disease outbreaks. Not only this, but the vaccination process itself may exhaust and disturb immune capacity. This is really key. The vaccination process itself may exhaust and disturb immune capacity and lead to chronic health issues, seizures, autoimmune conditions, autism, allergies, asthma, lifelong damage, and death. The longer-term cumulative risks of vaccines are in truth not examined or considered by those who make or test them, by public health authorities, or by legislators seeking mandatory vaccination laws. They fail to ask a most basic and crucial scientific question, namely, whether mass vaccination causes or contributes to today's surging chronic illness rates. I'm going to read one more paragraph and then I promise I'll be done reading here. Dr. Richard Moskowitz, MD, and Dr. Thomas Cowan, MD, give an in-depth look into the differences between natural immunity and vaccination in their books Vaccines, a Reappraisal, and Vaccines, Autoimmunity, and the Changing Nature of Childhood Illness, respectively. True immunity, whereby the body will not go through the major infection process again, can only occur when both the Th1 and Th2 immune response have been fully activated. This is key. This is key. They both have to be activated, not one pole. The Th2 pole is activated during vaccination, but natural immunity activates both. All right, this only happens when the infection process begins through normal routes of entry through the mucous membranes as opposed to injection. This natural immunity process resolves the infection with a full immune response. You need that full immune response. Whereas vaccination, rather than preventing the disease is actually prevented from ever being resolved. This is why outbreaks happen in vaccinated individuals and have nothing to do with the unvaccinated or herd immunity. The acute response that happens when an infection happens naturally, which is coughing, a rash, fever, etc., is an indication that the entire immune system is activated to expel the live viruses or bacteria, or excuse me, the viruses or bacteria causing the infection while simultaneously creating cellular memory that we will know what to do when exposed again, what we call immunity. We must also note that the infection process during childhood primes the immune system for future encounters with other infections and may even reduce incidence of disease processes in later life as indicated by rates of naturally acquired measles and the later occurrence of cancer. Cancer is actually reduced when you have measles. And here's a graph where we talk about the history of disease and the history of death. And if you'll notice way here at the very end over here, the measles vaccine was introduced when death had already dropped. So then I go on and I go on and I go on. So let me just give you a quick overview. So there I talk about disease. Here I have an ad. I have a great video by Dr. Wakefield where he actually explains this topic. I talk about why we shouldn't be fearing measles. I talk about Dr. Henley here talks about what to do if your child gets sick, gets a disease. And then I talk about vaccinated versus unvaccinated, and I go on through a bunch of other topics. So let me click on over here. So I really want to read that to you because for me, it's the cornerstone of everything else. Everything else falls under this concept of the difference between vaccination and natural immunity. Now, with vaccination, the process, there is and can be injury, and especially dramatic injury because of the way vaccines work. There's this concept, make a vaccine safer. Let's make safer vaccines. You know, the WHO just came out with some video footage, and Del Bigtree created this this highlight video for us that came out, I don't know, about a week or so ago. And in it, I watched it, and in the highlight video, they actually say vaccines don't work without the adjuvants. The adjuvant is what overstimulates the immune system so that antibodies will be created against the antigens. That's the purpose of the adjuvant. It has to aggressively overstimulate the immune system. Well, when you are screwing around with the immune system and you start messing it up like that, of course something can happen, like an injury or death. So that's a problem. Well, that's not the only thing that happens. Autoimmune conditions can happen as well. So that's also a big problem.